Yeah, so in terms of proofreading, I actually didn't get to really proofread my work, partly because I'd run out of time, but also just because I'd run out of stamina from it as well. So I spent way too long on my first section, and then it meant that when it came to my final section, it was a couple of days before the deadline, so I was sort of rushing to get it in.
I did proofread my work, and I definitely underestimated how long it would take. It takes a lot longer than you think, and it's really tiring. So my advice to students would be, don't do what I did and try and do it all at once. Take your dissertation chapter by chapter and spread it out over maybe a week, because that way you're more likely to spot any mistakes you've made, any references you missed out, and you'll get a better dissertation at the end.
Did I proofread my work? Of course, when you get into the zone and you're churning out pages and pages of ideas, sometimes you don't think about sentence structure and grammar, and these can be very powerful tools when you're putting forward an argument. So make sure you are checking your work.
With proofreading, I'd say either read it aloud or print it out. Sometimes hearing yourself saying what you've written helps a lot in terms of determining whether something makes sense or catching typos, and the same goes for printing it. If you can, I'd also say step away from it for a couple of days and come back to it with fresh eyes, and you'll pick up on things that you didn't notice the first time around.
There's nothing really better than having a look through with your own pairs of eyes and thinking about how this reads to the marker, how this reads to the person who is going to be awarding some kind of grade for this work. Are you hitting the criteria? Are you giving a good balanced argument? And ultimately, are you using enough references to support your argument?
So as far as proofreading goes, it probably sounds a bit obvious, but I'd say reading it out aloud to yourself helps massively, and especially if you read it as though you're narrating it, because that it really helps you spot any errors, any typos, etc. If anything doesn't sound right as well, that's one of the advantages of reading it as though you're narrating it. If something doesn't flow right, it helps you spot that.
Yes, I did proofread my work. So initially I did a spelling and grammar check, but obviously that doesn't pick up everything. Then I proofread it just to make sure there weren't any typos or things like that. Then I proofread it for common sense and just cross-referencing. So if it said table 6, it was actually referring to table 6 and not table 8, for example, and things like that. Then I actually checked that I actually included all my references. Again, cross-checking my citations, my references and things like that. And just making sure it's not too clunky really, and thinking, can I say that in a better or more concise way? But I must admit my proofreading was a bit rushed because it ran out of time in the end, and I wish I'd left more time to actually leave it aside for a few days and come back to it with maybe a bit of a fresher perspective to actually spot those errors.